Guruve Gauri Chanjaya Radhikaya Tadare Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dhanavad Pranam devotees. So this is a brief response to trying to catch up to some of the Q&A questions and answers that have been posted previously that, as I mentioned frequently, I'm trying to catch up on some of those. So 2 questions had come up previously, and one question was regarding Jai Saran Siddhaprabhu, Dhanavad Pranam, and all devotees. So one question that had come up was the nature of questions and answers, and why it appears that in some cases our Guru Varga, our Acharyas, have given different answers to the same question. And in part, I think I've explained before that questions and answers are adhikar based. Adhikar means according to your eligibility. So eligibility, I don't want this word to be connotated in the wrong way. Eligibility means the basis of your bhakti maturation will determine the ability to truly digest and act on an answer. It could be that if you ask a question and an answer is given at perhaps the adhikar of the person answering, the person asking the question may not be able to digest it, and therefore that was not the best answer for the adhikar of the person asking the question. So I'm giving an example. There is a perennial issue around the jivas falling from the spiritual world or not. So a lot of the discussion many times hinges around the fact that devotees will say the question had been asked to our Srila Prabhupada and he answered in a particular way. Of course, we know, I'm not particularly talking about that issue. Remember, I'm just extracting it as an example of question and answers in adhikar. So many devotees will say, well, we asked this question to Srila Prabhupada and this was the answer that he gave. Of course, factually speaking, Srila Prabhupada has given answers to this question in 2 ways. One was an ontological answer, which means an answer which simultaneously described an ontological reality. Ontology means the very nature of something, the being of something. So one answer he gave was regarding the ontology. For instance, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, we were all originally Krishna conscious. Devotees, give me 1 second. I want to check on my Tulsi because it's raining pretty hard outside. I just want to make sure she's okay. Tulsi appears to be fine and actually very much soaking up this wonderful rain, as is all the trees on the property. So, back to the point. So, Srila Prabhupada answered in a way by saying we were all originally Krishna conscious. So, if we took the sort of literal way we understand the word original, we would think that there was a historical origination of the jiva or the souls in the spiritual world, and now looking at our plight, we must have fallen here. But of course, you'd run into many theological issues as you went ahead and further investigated that. So one of the issues would be that, of course, in the spiritual world, there's no illusion. 2, in the spiritual world, relationships with Krishna cannot be broken. I've quoted verses on these things many, many times. So in order to reconcile that answer, you would have to understand that Srila Prabhupada was speaking in such a way to help us digest the idea simultaneously that we are constitutionally related to Krishna, but have not historically experienced that relationship. So that's called an ontological answer. Then there are some answers which are Siddhantic answers, and it requires the devotee to have the eligibility to digest the Siddhant. So in the 7th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada clearly describes, in the case of Jai and Vijay, that unless, in his purport he mentions, unless there is something to be done on behalf of the Lord, that no one falls from Vaikuntha. So that erases the misconception about the word original and perhaps digesting that in not mature adhikar as indicating we fell from the spiritual world, etc., etc. So here Srila Prabhupada is stating the Siddhanta, that no one can fall from the spiritual world, and in fact, the descent of Jai and Vijay is of the same nature in terms of the Yogmaya Shakti, which Bhagavan himself descends from. So, like this, by hearing the Siddhanta, now in some maturation, maybe what could not have been understood by that answer previously, now in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is clearly making this statement, and perhaps to adjust to whatever misunderstandings were gleaned from his original ontological statement. So, of course, this is not a discussion on the fall of the jiva or not. It is a discussion on questions, answers, and adhikar. So another example is that sometimes it's asked, if the jivas did not fall from the spiritual world, what was their origin? And I've heard several explanations given by our contemporary Guru Varga, and you can read even in Jaivadharma Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's also given many narratives describing this. So, for instance, my Guru Padma used to say, in general, just like mustard seeds fall on the edge of a knife, and some fall one way and some fall another. So he gave this in a sort of general way, accommodating all adhikar, as to a simplistic answer around how the jivas end up, some in the spiritual world, some falling to the material world. On other occasions, he has spoken about tatashta. So the general understanding that many devotees had regarding tatashta shakti was that it was a locale that was situated in between the spiritual and material world, and that somehow or another, staged in that position, the jiva makes a conscious decision based on their free will. I've explained free will many times before. Based on this free will, and they come to the material world. Actual examples given from the Brihad Aranyakya Upanishad, quoted by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the 15th chapter of Jaivadharma, are used as evidence for this discussion. But when you take a closer examination of that 15th chapter of Jaivadharma, and you look at the question that precipitated Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's answer, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mentioned, in answer to the question of Brajanath, about what is the nature of being tatashta swabhav. So, listen carefully here. Tatashta swabhav means being of the nature of being tatashta. Means being situated in a position by constitution in which one can be influenced by either the spiritual energy or the material energy. So here again, the examples quoted by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur from the Brihad Aranyakya Upanishad of a large fish swimming from one bank to another and observing the activities, and then misusing free will to make the choice to come here, in that same 15th chapter, he himself directly quotes, I've given all of these things as examples to describe tatashta swabhav, the nature of being tatashta. He was not describing either a history or a locus from which the jivas originate. He was describing examples to elucidate what it means to be tatashta swabhav, having the nature of being marginal. So if you read carefully, all these things come out. So again, the point here being that questions and answers are always adhikar specific. So, for instance, I've also seen my Guru Maharaj, questions will be asked about particularly deeper subject matters in the theology, and Srila Gurudev will more or less say, first try to understand Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, like this. In some cases, Srila Gurudev will go into some Siddhantic element of that question while still reining in that devotee to be very careful to hear what he has said, but to put into practice in your bhajan life the elemental things of bhakti in order to realize the siddhant that Gurudev is speaking. Many times also Srila Gurudev would speak during his Harikatha and say, those of you who can understand know who I'm speaking to. Others, you should put it in your file cabinet, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing here. Your file cabinet, and it will manifest later on in the maturation of your bhajan sadhan. So we should understand that sometimes when we think that there are different people giving different answers to different questions, you should understand that always question and answers are going to be adhikar based. So the person answering the question and the person asking the question both are speaking from consideration of adhikar. So for instance, if you are giving a lecture in a college university and you do not know the status of the devotional maturation of the audience, then of course we speak pretty generically about the realities which are digestible for the experience of the audience, like the soul is eternal and the body is temporary. And based on that, we can understand why nobody wants to die. That the material world is inherently dual, and therefore we cannot experience a complete sense of bliss here, but bliss is always accompanied by some kind of dukkha, or unhappiness or misery, coming from three sources: our own bodies and minds, others, and natural disturbances. So all this kind of katha is in the experience of those you're speaking to. If you're in an audience and somebody asks a question that is about the nature of rasa siddhant or rasa vichar, then we can answer according to the maturation of that question. Like somebody may ask, actually, one very good friend, one disciple, but I consider all like friends, not like disciple. So he asked a question this morning about the nature of ras, like how Santa Ras works, because even how Srila Prabhupada is described in talking in general about rasa siddhanta to describe the nature of each rasa, he described how Santa Ras, based in neutrality, an example would be the trees or the grass and other things in Vrindavan, which we do not count in the sense of being in Sakya Rasa, friendship, Vatsalya Rasa, paternal Rasa, or Madhurya Rasa, conjugal Rasa. But then Srila Prabhupada has also mentioned, our Guru Vargas have mentioned, in Braj, there's truly only three rasas: Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, and Madhurya Rasa. And this is because those things which in Siddhant, right, to describe the nature of rasa in a general way, like trees and so forth, you would say are in Santaras, but in fact, their function in Vrindavan is more in the mood of Sakya Rasa. Each tree is thinking, oh, Krishna will come and take shelter of me today, and with his Gwalbal, means his coward boyfriends, they will have a picnic under the shade of my tree. The grass is thinking, oh, we should create a very soft spot for Krishna resting after he will take the prasad cooked by Rohini, Yashodama, and Radhika, that he'll have a very nice place to lay down. And they will think Shri Govardhan is Haridasavarya. He is the best of all friends because he accommodates everything in every particular kind of lila. What is this verse? Pramada Madana Kandre Kandrete. Right? One verse describing Govardhan provides in all of his or her caves so many different abilities for so many different kinds of pastimes to go on. Pramada Madana Lila Kandre Kandrete. right? So many different kinds of wonderful and beautiful leelas are going on in the caves of Vrindavan, right? So Vrindavan is acting in so many capacities. Sakha, Sakhi. You understand? So, but in general, the description about Santa Ras gives an example to understand the nature of Santa Rasa, but in Rasa Vichar, in other words, in a deeper level of Adhikar understanding, this description I'm speaking now, that would be presented. Understand? So this is the simple point I wanted to make, that we should not think there are discrepancies in answers. We should always be looking at reconciliation, especially when it comes to the infallible nature of our Charyavarga, right? In our Guru Parampara Charyavarga, they're beyond committing mistakes, subject to illusion, etc., etc. Therefore, we should look at reconciliation of their answers. Of course, those who are in unfoldment stage, then they will always use the vetting process of Guru Sadhu Sastra. Our Guru Vargas also are doing this, but Guru Sadhu Sastra is in their chitta, it's in their consciousness. You understand? They're tadatmik with Guru Sadhu and Sastra. Right? But those who are unfolding, right, and have not realized that tadiya means that oneness with Advayagan Paratattva, the absolute truth, then they will have to still, by example and by practical sense, use the vetting processes of Guru, Sadhu, and Sastra. And the Sastra Yukti means the logic and so forth that comes from those vetting processes. But we should always be looking at reconciliation. That if we hear two different answers, we shouldn't think, oh, one was right, one was wrong, or maybe it's because they're in different moods. So, you know, our Gurudev told one thing, your Gurudev said another, so they must. No, we should always look at how to reconcile, because the incongruity will be in us, not in our Guru Vargas. So hopefully, Prabhuji and Didi, this answered your question. It was a very nice question regarding the nature of why some questions appear to be different. The other question that came up was coming up from a group. There's a group who writes in questions from time to time, and I'm always very happy in communicating with them. Very nice group of devotees. So the question was about a lecture that I gave some time ago about how to do the dhyan in our daily practice. So they were asking questions about how to formulate that meditation outside of, because I spoke on it from the perspective of all of the bhajan elements, like waking up in the morning, our morning sadachar, like bathing and so forth, so on, and then doing the Guru Astakam, which is what they were primarily talking about. And of course, we sing also the Mangalarti Kirtan of Param Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupad, Paramang Sastotara Sisimat, Srila Bhakti Pragan Keshu Goswami Maharaj. So I was explaining doing bhajan sadhan dhyan based on that. But they were saying, but what about throughout the rest of the day, and what about in your normal, sort of external dealings? So here, the thing will be, one should try not to lose the consciousness of the abhiman, means the self-conception gleaned from the dhyan of doing your Harinam, your Diksha mantras, your bhajan sadhan, Mangalarti, etc. You should try not to give up that internal conception throughout the day, even though there may be many impressions coming from the external world. One way to do that is always to consider that I am the sevak in the temple of the deities of your home. So, for instance, my deities are Shishi Gora Gadadhar, Shishi Radhavallabhu, and Giriraj. So myself and my good wife, we are sevaks in the temple of Shishi Gora Gadadhar, Radhavallabhu. This is our status. If we're going shopping, doing the service of acquiring the boga to prepare offerings for them. If we are going to any, we are in a retired condition now, but if we have to raise funds or do any kind of fundraising or make money or anything, we're doing that to accommodate the service of the mandir. And mentally we should think, I'm living in Braj. So there are two very nice small ponds near my home. So I meditate, I'm living at Radhakund. And that our temple is situated at Radhakund. And always meditating like this, I'm thinking, I'm a servant in the temple of Shri Shri Radha Vallabhji situated at Radhakund. Like this. So we can do like this. So then the question will become, but isn't that imagination? No, this is following instructions. Nama Sankirtan Sadhu Sangha Bhagavat Shravan Maturvas Shri Murtai Shraddhaya Sevan. These instructions given by Rupa Goswami Pad. How we should perform our bhajan life. If you cannot reside in Braj physically, one should do so by mind. You should not impose beyond those instructions other kinds of considerations. Oh, I am a manjari, I am this, I am that, etc., etc. For that thing, it should be either genuine internal realization, confirmed rather, with Guru Dev, etc., or someone you have deep faith in, or the genuine realization is self-evident also. So, but we should not impose that, because then it becomes kalpana, means imposed by imagination. Oh, I am living at Radhakund, I am a manjari, etc. So not like this, because that will set the seedling for prakrita sahajavad. Means like artificial performance of bhakti, simply stated, right? So, but we should have that meditation carry over into the functional aspects of our life, whether it's working, shopping, whatever. So we don't want to give up the abhiman, means self-conception obtained through sadhan bhajan. Because what we're doing essentially is we are accepting the subsidy of the Swarup Shakti coming in Harikatha, sadhan bhajan, other things given by Sri Guru and Parampara, and wanting that to take over our chitta. If you listen to your Diksha mantras carefully, the last part of your Diksha mantras is praying for just that. May the fullness of the revelation in Swarup Shakti of Sri Bhagavan, myself, and our relation, may that fully arise in my heart. So, to drown continuously the chitta in the absorption of the abhiman of being a sadhaka. Because Rupa Goswami said how to follow, even in Raganuga Sadhan, how to follow our aspired for relationship. Seva sadika rupena, siddha rupena chatrihi, tad bhava lipsanakara, vraja lok anusarata. So how do you do vraja loka? What is this? Seva sadika rupena, siddha rupena chatrihi, tad bhava lipsanakara, vraja lokanusarata. How do you do vraja lokanusarata? So, our Goswamis have mentioned, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur part especially, Rajlok Anusarata means we should follow in aspiration that person in the spiritual realm who we desire to have that service. That should also align with the Diksha mantras given by Sri Guru and our inner aspiration and the rising of the impressions of a particular type of ruchi from previous bhakti samskars. All these things will intersect and give this kind of impetus in the heart. But in practice, Raja Lokanusarata means how was Rupa, Sanat, Raghunath Das, Raghunath Bhatt, Jiva Goswami, how were they doing bhajan? How was my Guru Pada Padma doing bhajan? We should follow that modality. So this is Raja Lokanusarata, following how they did bhajan, sadhan. Understand? To the best of our capacity. So in this way, the meditation need not be diverted in lieu of, well, now I have to go to work, or now I'm going shopping, or now I'm going to the mechanic to fix the car. I still remain the sevak of Shri Shri Radha Vallabhji, to fix the vehicles for seva, to go to the bank to deposit the funds used in the seva, to meet with the devotees, and therefore getting in the car and driving down the road and being caused. It's all in the same mood of being the seva of Shri Shri Gaura Gadadhara, Shri Shri Radha Vallabhji. So the abhiman should not change. Of course, sometimes things happen and the impulse of those things from the material energy push on us to push us away from that abhiman, but we should try to come back, try to bring ourselves back into the position, I am only the sevaka, Daso Shmi of Shri Shri Radha Vallabhji, with aspirations for a particular mood, etc., etc., like this. So your meditation need not be broken by other functional things in the world. I quote this verse so many times. Mahaprabhu quoted to Raghunath Das Goswami, Antaranishtakara Bayalok Vyavyahar. Simple. That internally be completely nishta in your abhiman. And Vyavyahara means prudently deal with the material world. Simple, like that. All right, devotees, it's time. Speaking of that for Seva, I have to put the offering on. All right, my Dhanavad Pranam. Vancha Kalapataravishcha Kripa Shindavevacha Patitanam Bhavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.